So I think everyone we have
Okay.
is here. So if you want to go ahead and get started, that'd be fine.
Get started. Yeah, and then while we're passing these out here, we'll go ahead and kind of just go over a couple of the other ones that we have here. Concerning the concurrent credit, which was one of them I think you guys brought back on, which was at the 85%, I think was what you proposed. I think we're willing to accept that as far as where we basically keep 15%, which includes taxes, and then the remainder would go to textbooks, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was more along those lines. The one change we did want to look at on that was just to ensure that the one thing that we had questions on was we want to stick it at basically a percentage instead of basically putting it in there to where it's no less than the rate received in 2014-15. Reason for that, and not to say that they would, but if they would go through and drop rates for any reason, we really don't want to offer it and lose money on the deal. So we were basically wondering if you guys would be willing to do something as far as just setting it at a percentage, which would basically be 85%. So if it goes up, obviously you guys get 85% of whatever that number is. If it would go down, you would still get 85% of whatever that number would be.
Which I would be shocked if it ever reduced.
I would agree. We were basically
Yeah.
saying that way we don't have to put it in there and renegotiate it or anything like that. That was the rationale for that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I think, maybe later on we'll have a caucus and then come back
Okay.
and talk to you about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get one of these.
It's a biggie.
This is-
The other sheet you guys should have is the hours and amount of work for the contract year. That should be one of the 2 pages in there that we just handed out there.
Is this identical to your earlier proposal that you showed to us? Okay. You didn't change anything from,
Yeah, it's still
Your previous-
186 days.
yeah. And it's still 40 and 35.
That would be everyone.
Okay. Is your computer? Is your computer?
No.
Mhm.
Yeah. 175, 5, yeah, it's the same.
Okay.
Yeah, the spreadsheet that went around is what Sarah had been working on, and you might take a look. I think that was emailed. If you printed on anything other than this, it's so hard to see. But if you have questions, you might ask Sarah now or anything, and we'll kind of use this as a guide, and she check if there's some things that aren't answered.
What are
They just
the-
didn't get back in this.
What are I see there's 2 categories, top and bottom for, like top 5A schools, top 4A schools, bottom 5A schools. Is that just size?
Enrollment.
Enrollment size? Okay.
And the averages, I just took averages of ones that actually had a number in there, so if it was 0, they were not considered in the average. Like if there's no information in there, that would not be a part of the average. So for instance, like the 6 days max accumulation, I would have taken the 75, 100, 120, and so on, added those together, divided by how many have reported having sick time.
Okay.
I know it was one thing that some have PTO days, some don't, so some of that's been best she could to try to separate those things, but, you know, questions, anything, and we work on that. So we'll try to get it where everybody understands what it is.
Uh-huh.
Is that, under concurrent credit, you have some acronyms or?
PVCAD?
Yeah, that's, there's a little key on the bottom of the page.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah,
Teachers paid by the college, okay.
okay.
By
And
college.
you know, that's,
I know.
Didn't pay-
Very,
Paid by college and district. What is,
the teacher would get paid the money that the district would normally pay that teacher for teaching that credit class, and then the district, or the school that they would teach the other current credit for, they would also get paid that money by the
Okay.
college.
How many hours do we go? Oh,
Are we not on
1297, there we go.
okay. All right.
I just want to clarify, when you say hours and amounts of work, and you want to increase this to 186 days, that's with no monetary compensation?
I think this is a separate provision that doesn't, the compensation package isn't part of any of that. I mean, that's one of the problems in looking at this. That was one of the things I wanted to bring up later was, you know, the difficult thing for the board to negotiate and for you guys is if you say, okay, well, let's talk about this one little issue here, and then, you know, you might be able to get kind of some agreement around some of it, but until you know what the entire package is, you know, if we're getting something over here, we might give up all of this over here, but, or vice versa, but, so that was kind of the, and I know that for 12 years at least, that's how it's always been done.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to come up with a plan until you know everything, so.
So basically, what you're saying is, once we get to talking salary package, that may work in to the hours and amounts of work.
It could, yes.
It could.
I mean, but it works into everything, I guess, from that perspective.
Did that answer your question on that, Kathy?
Yeah, I think so.
Just an update on the health insurance stuff. I know Dean and Mark and several of them are still working on gathering information. I guess he had said the state was kind of being a pain with the privacy stuff as far as getting some of that. So I know they're still working on that and trying to come up with options. I think it's some of that. So.
they gave us a little bit of information, but what you need, their excuse every time is that it's privacy. It has nothing to do with personal data at all. Number of claims, and the lady that's in charge of this, claims her boss, keeps saying that that is personal data, number of claims on our policies. So we'll continue to work with them.
Okay.
We did get it a little bit, and we'll see what we can get with what they sent us the first time.
okay.
Go for the numbers. We'll keep going.
I still have a question, why the change here and here? I guess, going back to hours and amounts of work, I still have you clarified this before and I've forgotten since it's been so long, but why do you want to do the 40 minutes prior to school and 35 minutes after school? I mean, why the change there?
I think some of the concept is that before might be more beneficial to the students and to parents to some regard. You know, if you've got an issue with homework that day, after school's not going to be of much use because it's too late. But I think there was some flexibility amongst the board on that issue, but not in the sense that, this school might be 20 minutes and that one's 40, but to, the total hours, but, whether it's maybe 35 and 40, 35 before, 40 after, I think there was some flexibility there. But I think it's just a matter of the day was more of the issue.
Now, if you're saying 40 minutes before, when you look at an elementary level, they don't open their doors for 30 minutes before school starts because you still have people outside at recess in the morning watching over them, for lunch. So are you assuming that time amount paid too for those home or after school workers, before school workers? Are you assuming those times for them as well? Because that means instead of 7:30, yes, unlocking the doors, it would now be 7:20.
So we probably have to look at.
And, I mean, just from past practice, asking students, I have offered to come in at 7:15. They don't show up. They don't show up till 7:45.
Do they show up after?
Some of them, if they're not in activities, they will. But they utilize more the seminar at the high school, and the GPS and emails.
Yeah, they use GPS too.
GPS and emails, they utilize that quite often. But before school, if they just have a quick question over their homework, usually they're maybe 15 minutes, 20 before school starts.
And the elementary and middle school kids are going to be arriving whenever their parents drop them off. They don't have the luxury of saying, I'm going to go to school early today without their parents saying, yeah, I'll take you. So they can't get themselves there early.
Hard copy or?
It's in the master.
What's
one.
this?
Here's a separate
This
copy
is
of
just
it.
separated.
It's in the master
Well,
schedule?
it's the early retirement and things like that, the 403B. It's just it's already in that.
Did you make a counter proposal in that big document on the grievance? Because you had made a proposal, we had made a counter proposal. Did you ever do anything with that, or have you only made the one
I have to
proposal?
look and see. Just ours, I think. And
Are you
we
making a
I know we
counter
talked about
proposal?
binding arbitration. We'll look and see.
We had given you a counter proposal, and then we had talked about,
We had talked about that, but
Mhm.
I mean, like, we had 4 steps, there was less steps.
right?
And there was
The
one
first step.
early.
We eliminated the first,
thing. I
yes.
think everybody thought, it really
Notice
is a
of the
big
principal.
deal.
Right.
But then, I think the binding arbitration is what
And are you,
And there
because
were-
we had talked about the binding arbitration,
We talked about the loser paying the
Yeah.
cost of winning.
mhm.
And that was a no after discussing that with everybody. That's doesn't.
Because currently it's in the contract, and so that it isn't even that way now. I mean, like that would be an advantage to you if you were in the right. So you're not considering our counter proposal, or where are you
No,
sitting
we
on
took
that?
it back and basically everybody's still the same. We don't want binding, the board does not want binding arbitration in the contract.
So the board would rather spend more money going to court than settling it with the teacher prior to going to court.
Yes.
And
I
Bill,
mean,
can you,
That's not the board's position, but that's what the board does not want binding arbitration. That is one way to view it. The other is that the board would want the option of
I
having
guess
it
I-
decided by somebody that actually has a stake, a local judge instead of an arbitrator from somebody somewhere in Kansas City or Wichita or something like that. Plus, they don't want binding arbitration. They want the opportunity to have the use of the
I guess
court should they so desire.
okay, going to court, it can take you over 2 years to get sent. I mean, if you appeal it and you keep going, it can be 2-3 years before you resolve anything.
Yes.
And that's sour grapes for both the district and the teacher. And, I mean, to me, it's kind of like going to executive session. When you have personnel matters, you go to executive session to talk about them. You don't talk about them in front of the public for them to hear. Now, I'm asking, why can't we not have binding arbitration where a teacher files a grievance against the board? You want someone, third party, coming in to discuss it, but that teacher may not want that dirty laundry out there for the public to hear. And I know you're supposed to be open, but to me, it's just like
Executive session.
executive session, personnel issues. And binding arbitration gets it resolved quickly. It pushes you to resolve the issue before it ever gets to binding arbitration. And we've had one in 25 years, so I don't understand why you want to take it out of the contract since we've only had one
We
in
could use that
25
argument
years.
the other way. Why are you guys so concerned about leaving it in
Because
there
we
if
don't have
only
any due
one?
process.
Because we
Well,
don't.
but, if you look at the list, how many, is there 4 districts out of all those that are listed there that actually have binding arbitration? I mean, it's not like USD 49 is one of the first ones trying to champion this cause to get rid of it. We're one of the last ones that still has it. And it's been removed by many of the others. They don't have due process there either.
Several do.
Well, they have, and we've talked about having the form of that in this agreement. So, this is one of those issues that we can debate and argue about why your position's wrong and ours is right, or you guys do the opposite. But, I think this is just one of those that the board has said this is where they're at, and that's an important issue to me. And part of the reason they looked at the due process was to offset some of that.
Can we get the same list of how many of those schools have due process still? I mean, because that's our fight. Our fight is for this because of the due process. Can we see, I don't know, Sarah, for our vacation for the rest of the week, but I can start getting that next week.
We should be able to find it. I think we should be able to find it.
Well,
Anybody that gets it this year probably won't be, because, most of the stuff, she's looking at contracts from their existing, and anybody that they just negotiated may not show up, but I guess to the extent you
At least
guys
have a
think we
pretty good
missed
idea.
somebody, you can always point it out.
we have, so you gave us a proposal on the grievance procedure, and we gave you a counter proposal on the grievance procedure. So are you going to put together then a counter proposal on the grievance procedure that somehow finds some agreement between those? Or is your proposal of the grievance your first, last, and only proposal you're going to offer us?
Well, I think the only thing we've told you is that's the first, last, and only, is we talked about the grievance, we talked about, you guys made the offer, and, the board said they don't have any desire of making binding arbitration part of an existing contract.
Well,
Now,
it
whether
is
that's-
already part of the contract, so what we're trying to do is try to come to an agreement where, to alleviate the concerns about the cost. It's been used, Kathy said, once in 25 years, so I guess it's hard for us to rationalize, can you explain to us why it's so, why you're, I understand that you like court, that's your business,
But don't
can
make
you
assumptions.
Well,
That's-
it's your life, but why, if we're saying we'd prefer not to go to court, we would prefer to go to arbitration, can you give us reasons why that you
think
have
we've
such
done
strong feelings about it?
I think we've done that repeatedly. in this.
What?
Well,
It's longer, it's more expensive, and it's public. Those are the reasons we are
no,
seeing.
those are your reasons, not ours.
They're reasons. So what, you want it to be longer,
We
you want it to
don't want a
be,
binding process that we have, that we're bound by somebody from outside of town, right? We've told you that.
but we
This
said we
is-
can have an agreed upon person. You just won't even discuss that? I guess
We have
can we
discussed
not
that.
alleviate some of those concerns? If we don't want to use those people, can we use somebody else?
Okay, but let's turn this around. You won't even discuss the idea of taking it out, taking binding arbitration out of the contract?
We're talking about altering it in a way that makes it fair.
Well,
You know
this is
what?
fair. It's just not what you want it to be. You're saying that going to court is unfair.
No, I'm saying going to court is possibly not necessary.
And that doesn't have to be the
Right.
final resolution. We talked about having a process in which they'd be entitled to a hearing in front of either somebody within the district or the board before that step. And, I understand if the
Grievance is a
problem's
case.
with the board,
Yeah.
then I understand. It's kind of like the Tom Brady appeal going back to Roger Goodell. I mean, they don't like it, and that's understandable, but the beauty of it is you still have an option if the board comes back and says, oh, we ratify everything we did, and you're going to be saying, well, that's not fair, but you still have an option from there. You still have several options. If the district court would come back and say that they agreed with the board, you could then appeal it if you chose to.
But again, you're lengthening the process.
And spending more money.
And the cost.
Worst case
Well, but
scenario.
everybody's got to evaluate that. The district would have to evaluate the length of the process, the importance of the issue, and the cost of it. I mean, that's what you do when you look at litigation is, here's what it will likely cost us. Is it worth it? You know, do we go forward or do we try and compromise? I mean, that's part of the process. But if everybody's going to rush into binding arbitration, you're there, it's done, it's over, and everybody's stuck with the result, good, bad, or indifferent.
And it's not a rush. I mean,
No.
you take a long process to get there.
It
But you
take
can
2
get it
years for
done
that, too.
well, we usually got it done within a year. At least the one we did, we got done within the year.
But the,
So you're willing to remove the American Arbitration Association?
Yes.
We were willing
Be
to,
the arbitrator, but you want somebody that would make a binding decision.
we are willing to go with someone who's agreed upon by both parties because the board expressed that the American Arbitration Association was the problem, that they didn't like them. So we said, well, aren't, okay, you don't like them. Greg didn't seem to like them either. So we were offering up that option to try to make this more, I mean, it's in the contract now, so we were willing to look at other options for the arbitration to make it more appealing or more workable for both parties. But, you know, we want to work something out on that. But
can I just get back to where we started on this, which was the early retirement thing? Because we started here and we started talking about areas we may agree on, and the next thing you know, we went to grievance and stuff, we just flat.
But that's because we said we need to talk about that in caucus.
Yeah. Well, okay.
I mean, we were going to talk about it in caucus and bring back what we,
Well, this one appears to be one we're not going to readily agree on quickly. So maybe there's another one we could talk about that maybe there is some room for agreement, that when we caucus, we can reach some agreement on.
we can go to supplementals. You know, we thought we were done with supplementals, but we received an email from a request from a coach and athletic director on adding a second position to the cross country, right?
A second assistant.
A second assistant. You have a head and an assistant right now. And we've had 2 assistants, but it was through volunteering. Karina Beam volunteered for several years. And now they need that position because they've got 40 to 50 kids going out for cross country. And I believe they added a new competition for the girls. And they just, it's a safety issue to have 3 adults instead monitoring those 50.
The assistant position already is something.
There's
One,
one.
and they want to add 2.
They just want to change the number.
It's written, you have the guidelines, and I think, to me, and I'm not speaking anymore, it would be contingent on the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be to just increase the maximum. The numbers in the contract are the maximum number of coaches we're supposed to hire. Right now, it says 1 assistant. What they're suggesting, the athletic director and the coach are suggesting that number be 2, and then if the numbers don't justify it, then just do the 1.
Want us to add 2.
2 is the assistant.
Instead of 1.
Administrative decision. the board
As to whether to fill it. Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Because right now, they really wouldn't have the authority to fill it because it just says 1 assistant. But if you change that to 2, you can hire 1 or 2, or none.
Wouldn't it make more sense on all those to just simply set the head coach pay, the assistant coach pay, and take the number out from next to it? Then it can be set as needed. In certain years, that may leave it pretty rough, but that would just allow.
But then, I'm thinking of the personal issue, you know, of people hiring I don't know what I'm trying to say here.
Those numbers do control.
I think
It
numbers
controls
are
it.
There because of hiring more.
Then you
what-
need to,
yeah.
then you need
And
it.
that's why the numbers.
And
Yeah.
it would help with your budgeting, because you know I'm not going to have more than 5 in this sport or 7 in this sport.
High school or
High school.
High school.
school?
So if you don't have any problem with that, we could change that number to 2 and then just use it as needed. And if they don't have enough,
But if it's 2, then you have to have 2, right?
no.
No,
No.
There-
that's a max of 2, yeah.
It says a max of 2.
We have several coaching positions that aren't even filled right now.
Right.
Yeah, but we don't want to take them out of the contract because you never know when someone might bring that back.
I think the
Yeah.
conversations that I've had with Bruce and Chris both are all contingent on numbers.
Yeah.
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 That was one, I know they had a lot more cross-country kids.
Yeah.
But what- that's-
Well, and
Yeah.
when they're out practicing, there's a
Big
big space between the kids. So just for sheer safety supervision, some kid could pass out and nobody's there to see it because they don't have enough people to cover the span
If we
between the
already have-
fastest and the slowest.
If we already have positions that say that there's supposed to be 2, and there's 0 or 1 or whatever, I guess I don't understand the significance of the number next to it.
It's a maximum.
But,
You can choose to fill it or not fill it, but this is the maximum you can have.
so it's not really a safety issue, the number then? Because if it were a safety issue, we wouldn't put a maximum because we would always be worried about safety. So we wouldn't have to renegotiate it. We would just simply say that we're going to put how many out there we need to, whether it's debate or whether it's football. We're going to have the number we need to make sure we supervise the kids. I mean, to me, I could see your guys' position where you're going to say, well, we want to make sure we protect those positions so we get people, paid for that, and I can understand that. But if we're not going to do that, I can understand not taking away the position because we've got the pay rate there, and if next year we decide to fill it or, whatever. But the guaranteed number would be a lot easier. Let's say next year you have 150 kids go out for cross-country.
Right.
Then you don't have to negotiate it. They can get however many they need to make sure they're properly supervised. And the pay's set, so we know that they're going to get at that position, whatever I saw down here, 2.62 to 5.24%. I mean, because the
Yeah,
number's
we can
kind of
talk about
meaningless
that.
right now, other than a
think-
cap, which is the cap's really to our benefit.
I
cap is to
realize
your
that.
benefit.
I realize that. I think perhaps, I have to rethink this, how I
Well,
want
maybe
to say it.
maybe that's a caucus issue too.
Yeah,
I mean, it's-
yeah, and I will caucus on
Minimum
that.
number of coaches, like a sport would be guaranteed a head and at least one assistant, because some sports differ. So if you had 10 kids out for cross-country, theoretically, one coach would be plenty.
Right.
But let's say you have 18 girls or boys out for softball or baseball, and you have 2 separate teams, I guess you maybe could be okay, but you could run into some issues if you set like a quota, like 10 athletes, like one coach to 10
Yeah,
athletes for
we had
different
the
sports.
guidelines this year on where we should be coach, and every sport's different. I mean, because if you're on 2 fields compared to,
But if you get big financial
I would-
cuts, then those numbers it was kind of like when I first got on the board, 16 was the largest class size we were going to have. And that sounded great. Well, look at the numbers now. I mean, you just don't have the money, so they've grown way up there. And sports this year, I think, changed somewhat. And was it last year you had to eliminate some positions?
That my other
Assistant
question
coaches,
on minimums would be, like Kim was saying, didn't you say there are some positions that?
We don't have minimums.
Have
there's a
anybody?
lot of them that.
There are no minimums.
No,
You know,
I'm
if-
saying, she was asking about adding minimums. I'm
Oh,
saying, my
no.
only question with that would be is if we did add minimums, then, you're saying there was already several of them that we don't even have people,
Right.
anybody for.
I would just assume, see if the numbers go away totally and let that up to like the athletic director and principal, superintendent, whoever, and then again, I'm not negotiating, I'm just. telling
Sure.
you what-
The coach would have a big say in that too, though, right?
The issues, sometimes, I mean,
Well,
sometimes it's just.
to the AD, I guess. And then
Right.
it would be the AD that would come to the administration.
Yeah.
Because I would ask the question, I mean, right now, cross-country and track is unlimited, right? We don't limit participants. But I mean, if we ran into financial troubles, would we start limiting it? Therefore, that would limit the number of assistants that we are willing to fund for that particular sport.
Which we-
Likewise, if the dance team is dwindling down to 5 people, are we willing to continue funding that? So I am questioning, have we been using these numbers? If not, why are they?
We've used them as a max. So we've used them as a maximum really, and like they said, it is to your advantage because then you know there will not be more than this many. And so we were just looking to raise the max on cross-country. There is, if a program falls off and you don't want to fund it, you don't have to. You can say, it says 5, but we're only going to hire 2. Or we're not going to hire any because no kids went out. So,
And I think everybody agrees that's to our advantage, but, like on this one, if there's no number,
Then we
it
wouldn't
could
be
still be
talking.
something you guys could bring and say, hey, this has been presented. We think that, the board said or the superintendent said we're only going to do 1 assistant, and we think that's just a safety issue, and we could, the NEA and the board could still negotiate, but you would leave it up to the administration, and it would potentially take things off the table that don't even need to be negotiated. But if they needed to be, they could always be negotiated.
I guess my question would be, does it protect the minor sports too? Because I could see in some instances, not in this district perhaps, where the major sports who get the limelight have all these wonderful coaches, and then the minor sport has to battle to even get 1 assistant. And maybe that could happen now as it is.
You already have that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I think it's happening now.
That's what he should be looking at, the safety and making sure that everything's fair.
I guess if that's something you guys want to at least discuss and see, and if it's not something,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
go from there.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
it
I'm
doesn't,
not
I mean,
seeing any sentence in here that says that's the maximum. Am
I had the
missing?
same question when I first started, and
I guess it's
Maybe it's
just
just implied.
past practice.
Yeah, because
Past
that was
practice.
my concern, like, oh my God, we have to hire, and that's the.
there is
most
something in here
about-
somewhere.
Well, I think if it's not put in here that it says that if the numbers aren't taken out, we need to clarify that it's what the number
It's in there.
represents. Because whether
It's
that
on the
goes to
bottom of
binding
page
arbitration or
9.
court.
If student participation warrants these positions. Oh, that's positions. Let's see. Yeah.
What page are you on?
that wasn't what she said.
Oh, okay, so, oh, that's just, so what is this referring to?
Well, I guess just as long as we all know that if it's not in there, we'll look at adding
Yes,
max
student
unless you guys
participation.
agree to basically take it out.
Okay.
No, but even if we find it somewhere, we have to look at that language that you're reading and putting it right next to this section so it's clear that it applies to this and not to something else.
That's what I thought too. And then it's under this too. If student participation warrants position. So it is underneath, like under all the B supplementals, and then underneath all the sponsorships, both of them say if student participation warrants the position.
But that's only for those that have an asterisk, like after
Well, I
school study
think-
hour.
Could be.
I,
Well, it's on 9 and then it's again on.
So regardless, it sounds like we
11.
maybe need to clarify it a little bit.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's just referring to all of them above that, so.
Okay.
Oh, here it is, right here, page 13. If the programs do not warrant the number of positions listed in the contract, the number of positions need not be filled. The Board of Education can temporarily establish the necessary positions for 1 year, but then must negotiate and add the extra duty section for the next year. That's on page 13 under B, salary schedule note.
13, you said?
Yeah,
Page 13.
so it is spelled out there. And maybe that needs to be placed in another spot.
Like you said, in a different section.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
The next thing was disciplinary procedure, and then we were going to look at what Mr. Cat brought from Ottawa. Have you guys had any discussion on that? As the board had any discussion? Mr. Cat, he brought the Ottawa disciplinary procedure.
It was, and I don't,
It was emailed to us.
right,
Yeah.
I don't remember it all,
Mm-hmm.
but basically
You all were
it's laid out
supposed to look at it.
We thought it looked pretty good.
verbal, written.
Yeah.
That
We
guidance.
thought the Ottawa plan looked pretty good. It looked more concise maybe than what we have.
Everything being documented. I don't know, I don't think we drove that conversation.
That's fine.
Okay.
So you guys have looked over that, we can go back and we can look that over then, if you guys agree on that.
So you're comfortable with it?
I,
We'll talk about that in our, we'll just run to caucus here just a little bit, and go over some of this stuff, and I think that's something we could talk about here today.
That one, even if you guys talk about it, I don't think the board's had any, they haven't seen that.
Right.
So it'll be real tough for us to, I mean, I guess we can,
You could look at it
We-
and say whether you recommend it to them or not.
does somebody have a copy of it?
Yeah.
it was sent in email to all of us too, so it should be in your email somewhere.
It's been a little while since we
Yeah,
had it.
it was like in early June, mid-June.
Then supplemental salaries.
We just
And
got done with that.
we're going to talk about that for the numbers, and then
MTSS we
that's
removed.
done. Where's this one? Okay.
We did have the fair dismissal and the maintenance of standards. You said you did not want to discuss. Is that still the position of the board?
Yeah.
So then we just need to go caucus.
Okay.
How long were you at, 15?
And it was sent to you on 5/27, May 27th.
I think a little longer, unless,
Well, let's go 20 and then,
And then we'll be back.
Let's just say 15 to 30 and just get each other, we'll probably be over here and you guys will be over there and just,
well,
we'll find each other.
Well,
Or you can-
I don't know whether.
You guys can have this room if you want, we can go upstairs, just send somebody up to the dean's office.
Go just check.
okay, that would
Go
work.
check that room real
I
quick.
will.
Or, no, oh.
We can just check that room. We can go
Yeah,
back.
because the mic's
Go ahead,
wrong.
you want
I don't think there's.
No. We could go sit on the stage and bust through.
Kathy, do you guys want to go over the 403B stuff?
That we handed out real quick?
Oh,
I mean, I don't think it should take long, we got you the documentation.
is there
Okay.
tables and stuff?
There's no tables, but we have chairs.
Okay. What did you,
Indian style on the floor, Ron.
are you talking
Indian style.
this one? You're
Yeah.
talking this one?
Yes.
We just handed it out.
Okay.
Not at my age.
And maybe you guys want to look at that before you do
Yeah, if
that
you
in
wanna-
caucus, that
We
would be
can check it
fine,
over
too.
if you want to read through the copy.
I was just looking at it. Do you have anything you want to say about it, or do you have statements about it or anything?
There was one section as far as on, the only thing that we were going to look at with the rest of the board was there was a section under B.
Minimum
the-
hours.
The vesting schedule was the minimum hours.
Where's
on
that?
there.
It's under section B.
Section B, page 33,
Just that you have
third
to-
sentence down.
The minimum hours you have to work is 18.75, which seems a little low.
18.75 hours?
That really, that may need changed.
Yeah, that's the only section I think we were sure.
It might affect a part-time teacher, but not, it
Whatever that
wouldn't
is.
full-time.
And then I got another typo there on where it has, if employee leaves for any reason prior to, it has 1-0, that should be 10.
Oh, I see.
Are you ready?
Good enough?
Okay.
I think just over there, there's
You wanna
chairs.
stay here or you wanna go
I guess we'll just go over there.
there? You can have them leave if you want. Press.
Well, I just think, yeah.
Is there anywhere else they could take pictures?
Upstairs, there's places, but
I think we'll be fine.
I think we're all right.
I hope so. We should.
Let's go out here.
Either upstairs or shopping center or wherever that one.
Yeah.
Very cool. Kind of
Sorry,
shivery.
I didn't see that you were like to it. Just dropped it.
Just solve the world's problem,
No, but we created.
Ron. Okay. We made progress there.
We talked about the subject of the supplemental salaries, and at first we talked about the importance of the numbers. We felt like the numbers do have a benefit, and the people they have a benefit to are the athletic director. We have a new athletic director. That's a nice guideline for them to see, about what's the typical for this sport. We feel like it's a benefit to the board because it is a maximum. You're not going to have more than that many in that position. If you would need more, like if there would be a sudden increase in participation in that sport, I think the wording in the contract now allows for that. It also allows for the sort of a control as to, so the coaches know this is all I'm going to have, so I need to make this work. They can't go in unless they'd have a huge participation number, that they wouldn't go in and try to petition and say, hey, I need double what I had before. So we would like to see that cross-country, just the maximum up to just for the safety issue. And other than that, we really weren't looking to change all the rest of it. So since it allows you now to limit the cost and limit the number if you like, then, we kind of felt like maybe just leave it as it is. Abby made a comment about the idea of having volunteer coaches, that's a liability issue, that's a legal
Yeah, issue. that's not legal, and we don't do that, so I'm sure I know Karina was an assistant, but she was would have been compensated for that.
Somehow, yeah. So, someone outside this, they may think, oh, what's the point of it? But after talking about it, we feel like there is a point for the numbers to be there, and they really are beneficial to the athletic director, to the coaches, to the board. And so if we can, I guess our proposal would be to make those changes that we had proposed and then leave it as it is otherwise. That would be our position on that.
So basically
For
just
now.
upping the assistant.
Just change that number,
assistant
just,
cross-country
yeah,
coach.
just to allow for more supervision for the safety issue, if warranted.
2 instead of 1, but don't want to remove the number.
Right.
Right.
And then the number still would be a maximum, and you don't have to fill them. So that would
Is
be,
everybody in agreement with, I know before we went into that, about possibly moving something over to that section to where it says, hey, that's the max or whatever, or?
Well, I
know
think-
that was kind of
For
talk.
better clarification,
Better
as to whether to understand, I think what we saw on page 13,
Is
that
to move that over.
language
Move this.
of the B could definitely be moved over.
the B salary schedule note, we could put closer to, that. Because I'm looking at, because this is still, all of this is salary B.
And just make it a paragraph. The asterisks, you've
Right.
got
I understand.
names with an asterisk behind them, so
Mhm.
that would denote that just applies to those.
Right. As to
So-
those clerical changes, yeah.
We can do that. And I think this, this is all of this is one section, and then that, because when I'm looking to where you would move this salary schedule note,
You just put it right after B.
but all these things are there too. These things,
What thing?
the things on page 12. Lunchroom supervision, athletic support personnel.
But the only one
But
was
those
the
are-
number of positions is in the sports.
Yes. No.
No, there's positions being listed at the hourly rate.
These are two.
But that section you're talking about has B in quotes, salary schedule note, and it only references back to that B. So you could take that and say, start that paragraph out that says, if the programs do not warrant the number, and then otherwise.
We can move that to the front.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
Move to the
remove the
front.
asterisks
Also
on all
add
of them.
language that says the number in parentheses is
Okay.
But,
That's where I was
but they're
getting
not
at.
really the maximum. Because you've got a paragraph in there to change it, so it's,
That's true.
How about is considered to be the maximum?
Programs do not warrant the
We go
number.
on to the rest.
If programs do not warrant the number of positions listed in the contract, the number of positions need not be filled. So,
And then it gives the authority of the board to go ahead and make those changes for at least 1 year if those sections need to be expanded for some reason, as we kind of described with what's happening with cross-current.
well, the paragraph as it's written gives the numbers, the typical or less, and then this paragraph gives flexibility for less or for more if you really want more.
I don't think it matters for the board's perspective. I think it's cleaner to get rid of it, but if you guys don't want to, it's not worth
Okay.
fighting over. So it's,
We'll
So we
move
have a
that.
tentative agreement on supplemental
The,
salaries.
Yeah.
I'm assuming the other thing too is part of the 1 year, so that means this is a 1 year, then we have to go back in according to the next paragraph in there.
No, that's if they add somebody. They can add a coach without,
Well, that's without doing what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
This would just be if all of a sudden we had a huge participation in football and you said, we really need 2 more coaches. You
Or
can do that
cross-country.
without calling us up.
Right,
And
but
then,
at least we're mentioning
yeah.
it here on cross-country.
And then the next year, that can be a very short conversation. Hey, we really feel like we need more football coaches. Okay.
Can I ask a question without belaboring this point? But, I mean, as far as the athletic director, they are not looking at the contract to determine what positions are necessary, correct, Dean? They're going to go based on what you've set out as guidelines for how many students should be
Right.
supervised
And
per
if it
sport.
isn't in those guidelines, then we're doing what
and say
Well,
they
you
do,
may need to go
they
back
do
and
look at
do
the
that
contract.
paragraph to add them for that 1 year or
Right.
whatever, but,
Yeah.
but you're not, the AD at the high school is not looking at this negotiated contract to say,
But they
okay, how
do,
many-
they ask me questions all
How
the
many could I
time.
have?
Yeah, they do.
Most like, no.
They ask me questions all the time.
Well, they shouldn't be, that makes.
I mean, when we talk about the negotiated contract, they'll ask me if it's in there, and after they talk with you and you can't find it, then they come to
As
me
far
and
as
ask me.
The number?
Yeah, like we had that one with the parentheses and no number, they want to know how many.
No, those things, yeah.
Yeah, those
But,
things.
yeah, they don't run or look at the contract before, I guess this is
No.
interesting, the season or whatever, and say, oh, I'm going to hire X number of coaches.
No.
No.
Is
I
that
think they're going to look at the number of participants they have and base it on that, and then also maybe directed by you saying, hey, we've got to cut 10% out of everybody's budget.
Right.
You've got to do it, which has happened before. But, so I think from that perspective, I just don't know that that's helpful to the athletic director. The max number to the board is fine, except for when we do things like this, where we're adding one late in the game. So it's not really a max to the board. It is, but it isn't. And the control for the coaches, they're going to assume they don't have it unless they can talk their athletic director or the administration into it. So, it seems like those aren't, if anything, those are more our issues and or the board's issues. And so to the extent they don't have an interest in that, I like you guys looking out for the board, but I don't know that they're not really helpful.
Well, my guess is, the reason they're there is because something happened.
Well, and that's kind of
mean-
where I'm getting at with this. Are we just protecting this because it's already in there? We're not sure why, but it might be in there for a good reason.
I think it protects the minor sports, to where they don't stockpile on the major sports with a lot of coaches, and then the minor sports are left holding the bag with one head coach. I know that can happen anyway, but it gives the minor coach a little bit of arguing, credibility to argue their case.
This is
I
the
don't know.
typical number.
Yeah.
Unless we haven't filled it,
Right.
for 3, 4, 5 years in a row. But I'll leave it at that. I just wanted to.
In terms of the concurrent credit, I guess we were looking at our counter proposal with letter A, and basically, we would remove the language, let me find it here. I just lost it. So it would read, full-time teacher teaching during normal teaching period, the teacher who teaches the class or classes will be paid 85% of the monies received by the district from the institution. The teacher will receive the money within 30 days of the date the district receives it. And again, for the full-time teacher teaching during a planning period, the teacher who teaches the class will be paid by the district for the additional prep as per Article 1, Section B, page 13 of the bargaining agreement. That page number may be off. The teacher who teaches the class will be paid 85% of the monies received by the district from the institution. The teacher will receive the money within 30 days of the date the district receives it. The amount of money received by the district that is not paid to the teacher will first pay for employer taxes. The remaining amount will be transferred to a district in-service fund to be used for professional development or a fund to pay for concurrent credit class materials.
Yeah, I think the only thing we're doing is just removing that one sentence.
Yeah, so that,
The no less than the rate received for 2014-15
yeah,
school
I
year.
removed that. And so we have a tentative agreement on that. That's 2 in a row.
Yay! We're moving along.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see.
And what was the other one?
In terms of the grievance procedure, we really don't feel comfortable talking about it until you have looked at our proposal and made a counter proposal. So we would really like you to take it back to the board and look at the counter proposal we made, and then
On
bring
what?
back on the grievance procedure.
And then
We-
from that, redline it or whatever you want to do and make a counter proposal.
What date was that counter?
Oh.
'Cause think
I don't
that's
remember
already
when she
gone back
met.
to the board.
Yeah,
It has.
Because we had changed more than just we had changed some things, but not the binding arbitration. And so I guess we need to know where your stance is on the other items we changed. Because I guess it was in
Here
regard
was-
to the binding arbitration, we had changed that, you want to read it?
I took the actual contract and I lined things out, I redlined things, and I don't think it's red, but I crossed out things and then put in new things based off your first proposal and
Is this one you sent on May 28th, or thereabouts?
thereabouts probably.
Okay.
Because I've only sent one. You sent us
Okay,
one and we sent you one
I just want to make sure I
back.
was looking at the same document.
And the one I did was, I crossed out and put in things off of our actual document. I also put in a note at the beginning about level 1 and then options about level 5. And then we did talk about the payment of the arbitration. So, and why that was, we had given a reason on that. So what we would like then is I guess if you want to work off of that or the original contract, because the one you would give us, the grievance proposal you gave us was not, it wasn't out of our contract, it wasn't redlined out of our contract or crossed out. So working off of that document, if we could get a counter proposal on that, that would be good, that would be helpful.
Well, I think we could probably address some of that now. We already did address the, section we struck out here first.
On step 1, didn't we decide that we didn't see the need? But
Yes.
there was no harm in leaving it? Okay.
Yes.
So then,
The question on step 1, though, is it just delays the process. Because you've got that extra, you've got to now go to the principal, who then gets 20 days, or you've got 20 days to go to them, and they've got to make their decision, so. But I don't think that's an issue. On paragraph 2, that change, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Our proposal that I did, level 1 was writing, it was in writing. Because it was, level 1 said within 20 days the person may file the grievance in writing using the grievance form. So level 1, I don't think was a problem. You guys didn't want the informal, and we took it out in our proposal. We have level 1 was written.
This is the red line version, you said?
Yeah.
Section
Level-
C?
Send it to him.
Level 2,
D,
What?
I believe it's section D, isn't it?
B is the purpose.
D is procedure, isn't it?
That must be.
section A, B, C.
And this,
What
what
is
did you
section,
change this?
what is section C on yours?
Discipline clause.
Should be, this be D or?
Oh, you know what? Because we took out that discipline clause because that was one of those editorial things that really wasn't supposed to be there. It seemed out of place.
And
But
so
there's-
D becomes
There's
C.
different.
Yeah.
68 maybe?
D becomes C.
Okay.
I'm
I
just-
emailed this out to everybody, didn't I?
Yeah.
I thought everybody.
Mine starts with note for negotiations, level 1 was left in. and-
Yeah.
And then has Article 7, Section A is definitions, Section B
Yeah.
is purpose,
Just a minute.
C is struck out.
Right.
The new section C is procedure.
Right, that's it, and it has
And
some,
then
level 1 is in
D
writing.
is rights of teachers. Correct. And that's what we were talking about. So when I said level 1, under section C1, that's the discipline clause,
That, I think that was an error. I think that, because that is also present in the discipline clause on another page. So I think that paragraph
Just
somehow
duplicated.
just ended up there, somewhere historically when this document was put together. So that, I don't think belongs there. And I put a note on there. This appears to be added in this, it is on page 39. So,
I guess what I was looking at though, and maybe I just misunderstood you, did I understand what you said? You removed level 1 though?
When we removed the informal level
Yeah.
1, and now
Okay,
level 1.
I just saw level
Level
1.
one is
Yeah, no, we
Okay.
removed the informal level 1.
the previous level 1 was informal, and you guys had expressed some interest in having it
Okay.
start formally.
I just saw
So
the
we
level
just
one
made that
pieces.
formal. And then, so that was our counter proposal to your proposal, so that was,
but this says within 20 days from the date of awareness of the problem. I mean, there's no red line change to that, so that's what I'm,
That's the reason we were asking.
The change is after shall seek to resolve the matter informally.
within 20
That's
days.
struck out. And then it's may file
Not
the
in what
grievance
I
in
have.
writing.
Correct. The one that we received, that's a 180-page document from Sarah, is not the same red line version. What they have is a 7-page
Okay.
red line version, and this is not that version.
You want to email it to
well,
him?
so that's the only,
Email it to
if
Sarah
we're,
and she can send it.
we need to
out.
make sure we're talking about the same document, so if we
She's
use-
going to email it to Sarah, if Sarah can email it to everybody. You have the list, right?
Yeah.
Let's see how quick I can do that.
Sorry, that's why we were confused.
What you should have done is just said file, send as.
You're just a little more quick than I am on this
Yeah.
computer. This,
Is that it?
I think so.
Okay. Send it to Sarah.
On the level 2 then, the only thing I see you guys have is just the, no, I guess that's different.
You have it, Sarah?
Sarah's away from her office. Level 2, okay, so level 2 then becomes, level 2, oh, here, then I just deleted all of that because that was the written one. I did the reply there, that would be reply from level 1. Let me see if I got this together right. So within 20 days of awareness, then they would file it formally. Then you'd have 5 days for the, let's see, within 5 days, the principal would meet with the person in an effort to resolve the grievance. And then submit the decision within 5 days of that. And I would assume that would happen, most times that's going to happen faster. Level 2, although they may need to look into some things. Level 2, if they weren't happy with that at level 1, then they would file with the superintendent. And within 10 days of their reply from the principal. This is kind of reflective of what we already had, just kind of, there's a lot of crossing out because we eliminated that first one. So then they would have 5 days to meet with them, 5 days to reply to them. And then if they were unhappy with that, then they would grieve to the Board of Education. And then there was a little bit of difference on the time there because of the board meetings, at least 2 weeks before, let's see. Then the board would reply to them in 20 days. And then we just deleted the whole labor management. And then down when the changes that we made in the arbitration were the let's see, mutually agreed. Oh, it already says grievance will be heard by a mutually agreed upon representative from the American Arbitration Association, but it could be, and it could just be heard upon, be heard by a mutually agreed upon representative. You know, we could
stop there.
and we can find something else to put in there, and then, and we had.
What happens if you don't mutually agree upon somebody? Does that just stop it?
No, I mean, I think we both have a responsibility to find somebody that we can agree upon. I mean, we're supposed to come together and work to find agreement, you know, not to dig our heels
What if
in.
the board's position is that the one we've given is more than bending over backwards to meet in the middle, and you guys say that, there's no way we're going to meet with that person, or you agree to use that person?
Well, generally, you would pick more than just one person. You know, when something like that, when you have the, you would have several, and we could say, no, we don't want that one, just like
It's like
cross
getting
them
to
out.
strike judges.
We're going to, like striking judges, we could strike out people, and that's how, that would make it fair, that you could say, well, we don't want that person. You know, there may be
Like
people.
you could bring 3 choices, we bring 3 choices, and
Each can strike 2.
yeah.
Judges.
Okay. Is that it on that one?
And then we had the section D, and I kept a lot of that, which I don't think section D was really reflected in a lot of your proposal. And I changed some things since we got rid of the informal under number 5. I got rid of the. It just says everything shall be in writing, because everything would be in writing. So those are the changes we made. I thought we sent that out to everybody, so. A long time ago. We sent that out in May. You never had it? Okay.
Okay.
Then our understanding is the leaves, you're going to put a small informal group together to talk about it, correct?
Dean?
Possibly under the direction of Mr. Cat.
Yeah, the accumulated leave.
That would be good for you guys, what do you want to do?
I would think, I mean, to me, it just seems easier if we just talk about it here and just get it done. So, I mean, tonight's probably not the night to do that, but.
Okay.
And then the hours and amounts of work, wait until the end when we can talk about salary and see how those work together.
I'm sorry, say that again.
the hours and amounts of work, you want to wait until
Yeah.
the end when we can talk about salary and see, make that connection together?
Not necessarily. I mean, because all of these tie to salary to some degree.
Right, but I think here you're talking about adding 7 days to the contract, and then you're talking about adding 30 minutes, which equals almost another 13 days to the contract. So you're talking about 20 days of additional work that you want to contract. Now, a lot of this time, when you're talking about teachers being available before school or after school, are we finding that that's a problem now, that teachers are not making themselves available to the students? I mean, is that something the board is getting complaints about?
No, I think what we're getting what they were getting complaints about was the fact that, our calendar is shorter than most, if not all, and that like the contract day is shorter than most.
I think it was shorter than some of the ones you compared to, and I think some of the comparisons that we made were, and we can look at this graph, or we can go make a graph that compares to make our case. But I think when we talk about adding time to the contract, we have contracted time, and I don't think you could ask professionals to work for free. You couldn't say, I want you to work 20 days. You wouldn't give me 20 days of legal service for free. But if we're going to say you're going to add 20 days of work.
All right, I'm doing it tonight, so.
Well,
Civic duty.
civic
There
duty.
you go.
No. But if you're talking about that sort of work, you want to contract people to be there, you must be there, then I think it's reasonable to expect to pay for that time. You are getting that time now for free because people are coming in early and they are staying late.
But that's the part of this whole argument that doesn't make
Mhm.
sense to me, because we hear that teachers are working greatly in excess of the contract that's there. They're putting more days, more hours. All this is doing then is quantifying that and saying, we're gonna put it in the contract that you do that.
It's not necessary but if you put it in the contract, it's a contracted service and you have to pay for it. So if now I do that as needed. If it's a busy time of year and I need to be there, or if I know a student's coming in, or if I know a student wants to stay, I'm there. You won't find a teacher that doesn't do that. However, I do it, and it's on me when I choose to do that. And unless you're finding that, if you're finding the teachers aren't there for the students, then that's a valid argument. But I don't know that that's a situation.
I'm just looking at, as I research articles and what's going on statewide with other districts in negotiations, Salina, for instance, their proposal this year is to go to an 8-hour day. Their argument is, well, teachers are full-time employees, and that's where they're at. They also have no more than 200 hours of plan time for the high school teachers per week, max. Now, those are all differences. I mean, we have 450 minutes. So,
Again, we can compare things. You're cherry picking comparisons, and we can compare things.
Just to
but-
clarify, we didn't cherry pick any of those. We went out and grabbed
Right.
those off
Yeah.
of the KSB side. I mean, you could say that we cherry picked them all you want. We didn't.
we gave
So-
you all of them we looked at.
So-
I don't think there's cherry picking when we look at the smallest 5A schools, which is where we bounce between there and 4A, and the largest 4A, the WAC schools, and those that immediately surround Hays, Kansas. I mean, that
Okay.
could, and I think we then threw Blue Valley in, which I think we would all agree that they're kind of the poster child for the state of Kansas.
Well, I agree that the teachers would work more. If you want them to work more days, I mean, they all work more days. A lot of them go out and get jobs in the summer. And this is the job they love. But they also do expect to get paid for their work, as most people do. And I don't think that's unreasonable to say, we want to add 7 days, we'll pay you for 7 days.
But let's not be, I mean, we also know what the district spends on average per teacher, which is about $65,000 a year.
I think that's very inflated.
We showed you the numbers. There's
Those-
nothing,
Yeah, but
what's
you
inflated?
you need to take the supplemental and extend it out,
Why?
because those are like the second job that people
Yeah.
have.
Did
That's
you also-
not your
That's not your.
yearly contract.
No.
That's a second job.
To me, it's what the district spends.
Didn't they
And
also
that's- I
have
mean,
concurrent
At the
credit on
end of
that
the day,
list?
that's what the district is
You
looking
also
at.
had concurrent credit on that list, correct?
We absolutely did.
You don't spend that money. That comes from the college.
But we get paid that from the college. We don't have to pass that on. I mean, every district doesn't pass that on. I mean, under that theory, we don't spend any of that because we get the money from the state of Kansas. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but those are all dollars we pay. Now, a big chunk of it gets paid by parents in addition to what we get from the state, but
We were merely putting together the sheet based on, you see a lot of places where you work at and you get a sheet that says, this is what your true salary is. Not saying whether or not it's coming out of this one or this one, just to give people an idea of this is what you truly make. I mean, I've been at numerous jobs that they go, you might get this much and maybe I take home this much a month. But by the time we add in benefits and everything else, this is what you truly cost the company, or in this case, the district. That was the reason we put that together.
Well, then if we're just doing simple math, you take the total payroll and divide it by the number of days, and a day costs $68,000. So when you're talking about adding 20 days in payroll, that's what a day of payroll costs now.
does that include supplementals?
No,
Concurrent?
that's base salary only. That is base salary only.
So
Because
it
our base
actually
salary
costs
only
us
is,
more than that.
what's that?
It would actually cost us more.
Well, no, because we're talking about adding time to the base salary. We're not talking about adding, extra days for other things. But,
But student contact days, you'd have some supplementals. up
well,
there.
you would, but we're not, we're talking about just the base salary, and I think that's a fair number to talk about. We're not going to inflate it with other things. The base salary is about 12 million, something. It was off the numbers we looked at. And if we have 179 days, we're talking about $68,000 a day. So yes, if you want to add that, I think the teachers we can put that money into the salary schedule. That might be something that they would consider. I doubt that people are going to say, yes, I'd be happy to work 20 days, contract 20 days for free. They are working a lot for free already, and saying they don't is really offensive.
I don't think anybody said they did.
You did.
No, I didn't.
Last time we were here, you
What I said is you're
did.
already doing that, so
No.
what we're saying is to quantify it.
Last time we were here, you said, I don't know that they really do.
I said, I don't know that every single one does, and I think you guys would be, I guess, if somebody here wants to make that allegation, I'd love to hear it, that every single teacher puts the same amount of hours in after school and
No.
in their free time.
They don't all put the same amount in, but I would say 99.9% of them put in more than the contracted time. You're getting it for free now. You're trying to add all this. We're just saying if you start adding this in the contract, then people are going to expect to be paid for that contracted time. If they're showing up early and they're staying late now,
So you're recommending a $1.3 million pay increase for the teachers?
I didn't come up with these numbers.
You're
I'm telling
68,000
you.
in
You're
20
68,000
days.
a day.
Right. I'm just telling you how much a day costs.
Is there a counter proposal you'd make relative to the number of days and the number of hours?
Well, that's what Kathy was saying, maybe like once we get into salary, if you had enough salary increase, we could come to some conclusion that, well, if we had this sort of a raise, then perhaps we could add back, and you could prioritize which days you really, is it more important to add the minutes before school, or is it more important that we get spring conferences back? What kind of days are really important to you?
Well, and I think, again, where we started
but
with
wait a
this was,
second.
one, looking at how far, where we were in comparison to others, and then also we were receiving specific feedback about the lack of spring parent-teacher conferences, so that's 2 days. And, what's the other issue? Huh?
There's one more.
Well, I think you've got
One more that we
in-service
were hearing from
issues.
the public on. Oh, professional development, that was actually coming from teachers. So those were specifically the days that we were trying to add back to the calendar, and also looking at how far we were in comparison to the other schools.
But at that same time, some of those other schools were still getting increases when we were frozen.
Yeah.
And that's why the days were negated off.
And some of them, when we got increases, they could have been frozen.
But we
The
gave-
average salary compared to all those schools.
We took 4 days away, and we compared Blue Valley and the others to the pay raises we got over the last, I think it was 15 years, and we are ahead of Blue Valley by percentage of increases over that period of time. We also took 4 days out of the calendar because there weren't raises, but in 2 subsequent years, we gave 11.5% pay raises, 6% one year, 5.5% the other, and those days didn't come back. Now, I
Well-
understand that contract was negotiated, but we didn't get $68,000.
And about 55% of those teachers are gone now,
Yeah.
so
Mu-
the
Much
money
of,
follows the people.
much of that raise was movement on the pay scale. When those people leave, that wasn't an increase in the pay scale, that was movement within the pay scale. And a lot of that is gone. Those people are gone. More than half of those people aren't even here anymore. So that's not, that doesn't persist.
I would agree some of those people aren't here, but when we talk about the fact
We
that
added
all
them.
these.
We added it
There
up.
were 55% aren't here.
55% of the people that were here then are not here now.
So in the last 8 years, we've lost 55% of our employees.
8.
Without
Of the
recruiting.
ones,
That was 2006.
of the ones that were here in 2006.
So
That received
we've turned
that.
over half the staff in 8 years.
I mean, we went through our
Yeah, you could, that's feasible. If you
Over half
lost-
the staff.
Sure.
we tallied them.
So we shouldn't have much of an issue then with that severance issue, because they're all gone.
That's what we've been trying to say, is that there's only 50 left out of 250
I thought it was
employees.
68, but anyway,
I'm not sure.
That's the 68 was the
Yeah.
number, but yeah.
It's still 25%
Oh,
of the
we're
current
over time.
employees.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
but-
over time. We would need to set another meeting.
Well, I just
Soon.
want to say one more thing. I still think it's a mistake not to meet with Mr. Cat about that accumulated leave. I'm saying that, Lance, I really believe a meeting with the small, like Mr. Cat suggested, is a good idea.
We could do that yet this week, if you want to have a little.
You guys can meet, I mean, there's nothing that stops you guys from meeting. I mean, he doesn't, I mean, it's
If we
Yeah,
want.
I'm just.
administrator meeting with employees, so.
Do we have anything else we want to, we would need to, we had some other things we talked about, but we really have gone over on our time, so, we,
Do you want to meet this week?
We'll be in Wichita tomorrow to be the Thursday, so Wednesday.
Year one day. The year of
okay. We can get some people together on Wednesday.
What time Wednesday and where?
Really anytime before 3, we have a budget
Morning, 10:30? 10?
I don't.
10 o'clock? Just say 10 o'clock. We'll get some, I'll email with you, and we'll get some, a couple people that want to meet and chat about it.
Just let me know.
Okay?
And Dean, where would you want to meet at?
Oh, probably my office, your office, Sarah's table there.
When would you like to meet again for this group?
But the day thing, I think we kind of left that. I'm just curious where we're at on that, because we made a proposal, and we haven't heard any response back
On which,
on the.
Hours and amount of work?
Yeah. I mean, because that's where, I mean, everything that you guys made a counter, you want, we're expected to counter that.
We'll
We'll put
counter
one
it
in
next
writing
time.
then.
Okay. I mean, it's just difficult for us to make a counter to our own offer.
Well, we had
Well, our
verbally
counter
counted it.
was-
We had verbally, you had said you wanted that many days. We said a day is $68,000. We wanted you to think about which days that were important to you. We said that at one of the meetings. And then apparently your counter is you still want all of those days for no, I mean, you
I would
you
say if
didn't
wouldn't
adjust,
mind,
you didn't
put something
prioritize.
in writing so we can actually take that back to the board,
Okay.
if that's.
We can do
not a
that.
problem.
But that's, we were just, we didn't say, yeah, I mean, we didn't say, no, we won't add days to the calendar. We just said, I mean, since we haven't talked about money yet, and we feel like people are going to want paid for their work, then we ask that you prioritize the days, and we could talk about them, but we can put something in writing to that effect. And then when do you want to meet? Do you have something, Lance, on your calendar?
That's what I was just looking here, just to see what would work for.
There's board meetings on the 3rd and 17th of
How about the 5th?
What, is that a Tuesday?
Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
I won't be here, but you guys can do it without me if you need to.
Tuesday, August 5.
Okay,
What
you're
time?
going to be gone all week.
Probably
No, I'll be
5:30
back the
again.
6th, but I'm gone the 5th.
How about 5?
What about the 6th? Can we do the 6th?
Matter to me.
That Thursday instead?
Oh, you said the 6th.
August the 6th?
Oh, no, that won't work for me.
Oh, okay, never mind.
That's my anniversary.
Well, you don't,
Well, I mean, you guys can meet, but I won't be
I
here.
spent my birthday
Don't
here.
forget that.
Yeah.
So are we okay as the 5th at 5 or?
I don't care. My anniversary's not the 5th or the 6th.
You can go ahead and meet with
She does
them.
the 7th, and I forgot.
I'll work on the menu.
Okay,
You guys can work.
okay, because there might be days I can't. It's Friday, so. Okay,
I think the 5th.
August 5th.
we'll meet on the
At
5th.
5?
At 5.
Okay.
Okay, so the 5th at 5?
Mhm.
Sarah, what email?
8515
all the
F.
board members the language that Kim just emailed? I mean, or did you, are they on that? I
Hmm?
haven't.
Yes.
That's right. Can I, got to reschedule my one though.
Yeah, no
There you go.
kidding.
How could you miss that?
I mean, I could tell my husband he could do it without me.
All right, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.